This talk is a story that comes from my experience as a EAP practitioner, which I am not anymore. But that experience shapes how I address generative AI and what I'm doing. And I think generative AI has exposed this problem, this disruption, but it's something that we were already facing. And I want to show how EAP professionals have the perfect set of skills to find the solutions in this field. And so I was really thinking about this problem pre-2023 or end of 2022. I noticed that my students were using Grammarly to help with their language. And before that, like machine translation has been around for decades at this point, which we mostly considered that cheating and we banned it. And that wasn't addressing the issue, it was just avoiding it. So I was already thinking about this, and I was already coming around to this idea that actually it is fair for students to be using these digital language support tools because, especially for our students who are multilingual, even for speakers who speak English but non-prestige varieties. So I was teaching people who spoke Nigerian English as their first language. Just because they struggle with academic English, it doesn't mean they don't have amazing ideas. They're not insightful and intelligent. It's just the expression that they're having, they need to learn. And the reasons for this, like English being a lingua franca of education, of business, of science, of the prestige you get from a degree from an English majority country. These are all like sort of colonialism related issues. And so I was coming around to the idea that these tools can address that injustice if we approach them the right way. And so then ChatGPT, enter ChatGPT. Now you've got fluent academic English on demand, this magic machine that can do the academic language. Like what? And then I was like, so what do we do? This is a machine that can do all the things I was already considering and more. And so suddenly the thing the students were most anxious about was something that this machine could do for them. And so I basically I found that my students were focusing so much on the surface language, and like they weren't wrong about that. That's what we were rewarding. It's what we were trying to teach them a lot of the time, like in part, not everything. But it did mean that my students were focusing less on their argumentation, less on their synthesis, less like deep engagement with the ideas and the reading because they were so focused on handing in this end result, this grammatically and lexically perfect essay, and suddenly there was a machine that could do it. Like, why would they not use it? The incentive is there. Our academic misconduct cases exploded. We had sort of 50% of a cohort in one term reported for academic misconduct. So we get these essays in, and it looked like they were using AI to write them. Um, and then I thought, well, I feel like this is not a student ethics problem. I can see why they're motivated to do this. To me, it was a pedagogy and assessment design problem, and what we were doing was outdated with the new technology that was available to them. So what I did instead was I redesigned my assessment. And so this was an assessment I did in my last term as EAP tutor. I wanted them to focus on the argumentation, what I thought were the kind of intellectual skills of being academic, or the function of academia, not so much the form, which would be the academic language. And so I created this assessment where in invigilated conditions, they handwrote a draft of an essay outline. Unseen questions, so they couldn't pre-prepare apart from having knowledge about the topic we'd been covering all term. And this wasn't graded, so it was lower stakes. They could be good, didn't matter so much. Like their language didn't matter. They didn't have to use full sentences. It was bullet points. And then I took a copy of that. They took a copy of that home. So I had evidence of their digitally unassisted thinking, basically, what they could do. They took that home. They had a week then to refine it. They could unrestricted AI use because I can't detect it, therefore I can't enforce any rules I think about how it should or shouldn't be used. Although they did have instruction about beneficial usage, and then the end result of that was what was graded. But then I could compare that to the evidence I had of their digitally unassisted thinking. They also handed in some reflective questions about how they'd used it. And what I found was kind of the backwash from this was that they had to be more focused. Like the results were they couldn't do this well if they hadn't also been engaged in the lessons I'd been teaching them about how to argue, how to do claims, how to back that up with evidence, how to use sources. And also, so the validity was improved as well because I wanted to test that argumentation. That's what I did. I wasn't testing their language in this case. I was testing that argumentation. No academic integrity cases basically because there wasn't a way for them to use it unfairly. I just accepted that if it's at home and it's unobserved, they can use it. And so what has ended up happening was I found that it wasn't just an EAP fix. Eventually, I realized that uh, this design could function for kind of basically any discipline. And so, because it improved the validity, because I wasn't testing their language anymore. And a lot of written assessment, even if we say it's not, we're testing language in any field. Because they have to be doing it in academic English. It improved linguistic accessibility because they didn't have to use like perfect English to do that ideation. And authentic writing processes. I was thinking this is like authentic contemporary writing processes. People use these tools. And so I'm developing it at the moment to be a more general written assessment model, which I'm calling voice first written assessment. Just finished writing the journal article for it. And we're going to be piloting it soon at Oxford within this year. And the other things, so to end this, I wanted to point out that EAP is not remediation. We're useful for the whole university. I did a keynote at Google recently, the headquarters in London, and someone asked in the Q&A, who in universities can we go to help us with this? And my answer was literally, go to your EAP departments. Generative AI disruption is fundamentally a language problem. I find when I train staff in the university, like very intelligent professors here, I have to make them unlearn things that they have learned about language to get them to even start to understand how to address generative AI in education and in their assessments, especially in their assessments. And people who are EAP professionals know about academic skills. They're able to, I find, able to separate think about the skills as opposed to the language itself. Um, and so EAP sits at the intersection of all three of these things, language, academic skills, assessment design. And so I feel like we've been prototyping this under pressure for years because generative AI affected our field so much more than maybe other fields as well. So we kind of have the knowledge and the skills that the university needs. And that's the end.